Hey folks, have you ever found yourself having the same conversation with different people at the same time? Over the last 3 days, with 3 different people, I have had 3 different conversations that all benefited from the same bit of insight. And I am a huge believer in the rule of three, and therefore I am going to be sharing this insight with you all because it's clearly important. I had a young lady reach out to me the other day. I had, in the past, offered her advice as to how to build up her financial foundation in order to qualify for a home. And she reaches out to me and just out of the blue, and she's like, Chris, I need your help. I'm going to call her Phyllis for the sake of her privacy. And I was like, okay, Phyllis, what's going on? And she's like, I am so frustrated right now. I need you to help me, talk me. I need you to save me. I was like, well, what's going on? She's like, well, I've been doing what you said, trying to build up my credit, and my realtor reached out to me and he said he found the house for me. And I took a look at it, and it wasn't my favorite, but he kept insisting that I need to get this house. So okay, let's do it. And he told me that I have to work with this specific company, and I trusted him, so I worked with them. And they have, Chris, they haven't done a good job. Over the last month, my credit's been hit 7 different times. They keep coming to me with different things, this and that and the other thing. They're mishandling my personal information. I was supposed to close this past Tuesday, and it didn't happen. And now the sellers come to me and said, hey, if you can't close this coming Tuesday, we're going to keep your earnest money and take somebody up on another offer. And Chris, you're a loan officer. Can you help me? And I took a deep breath and I was like, well, Miss Phyllis, here's the deal. I would love to, but I honestly don't know what your situation is right now. I mean, I had talked with you months ago. Your credit situation is probably different, and let's be real. Your current loan company's getting, taking care of you right now. And she's like, nah, poorly. And I was like, but still they've got you. She's like, well, yeah, but can I swap to someone else? And I was like, if you came to somebody else earlier, probably. But there are certain guidelines that loan officers have to adhere to, and I don't know anybody that would be able to go ahead and get you approved for financing in 5 days. She's like, well, what do I do? And I was like, well, you got 2 choices. She's like, okay. And I was like, and here's where it hit me. I was like, I'm going to start from the bottom up. What's the worst case scenario? She's like, oh, well, I lose the house. I was like, okay, so let's play it this way. Worst case, you don't get approved for financing. You lose your down payment. I mean, your earnest money, because you've been waiting on this house for too long, and you're clearly past your financial clause. So you lose that money. You also lose the money that you put on the appraisal. So that's what, like, I'd say what $2,500. She's like, about $2,000. I was like, okay, so you're down $2,000. And the seller is so distraught that he can't sell his house that he goes on a rampage and burns it down to try to get insurance money or something, or a meteor crashes on it. I'm like, worst case scenario, the house is gone. You can never go for this house again. And she's like, yeah, that's pretty bad. I was like, okay. So best case scenario, that doesn't happen. Your loan company pulls that hat trick. They get you in that house. Everything's easy peasy. And you just look back on this period of heartburn. And remember when I told you that, hey, buying a house is never a stress-free experience? She's like, yeah. And I was like, well, that's true. So that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you don't get this house and you lose $2,000. She's like, yeah. I'm like, is that $2,000 going to bankrupt you? She's like, well, no, I got access to other money. I was like, okay. Well, you said you weren't super happy with this house in the first place. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, how about this? Worst case scenario, you are kind of heartbroken about this. So you stop house hunting for a couple months, and you work on rebuilding your financial foundation. And good God, 7 credit hits, your credit probably tanked a little bit. So give yourself a couple of months to get back to where you need to be. Then, reach out to maybe your realtor again, or maybe another guy. You want to start totally fresh. Heck, start in a different city. You reach out to a new realtor, you reach out to a new loan company, and you go through and you try the same thing again. Maybe this time it works. Maybe this time you get in a house that you really like. So your worst case scenario in this situation, it's not looking too grim, is it? And she's like, you're right. And her voice softened up at that point. She's like, I've never thought of it that way. I personally have never, up until this week, I never understood optimistic nihilism. My wife and I have this card game called Doomlings, and one of the cards has a picture of optimistic nihilism. It's this little bubble guy, and everybody else around him is quivering in fear, and they looking sad, and he is just smiling, and he's got these big eyes, and his arms are open, and he's like, nothing matters. And I never got that because I am tied to the things that are happening. And things are important and things have value, and how can nothing matter? Until I got hit by that bit of insight, and I was talking to Miss Phyllis, and I was like, by accepting, or at least identifying the worst that can happen to you, it really puts things into perspective. I was talking to a young lady recently, and the same thing had happened. She was telling me about how her life was horrible. Issues with an ex harassing her. Work is just terrible. She goes to bed crying every night, and she's at her wit's end. And I was like, okay, well, that is pretty bad. Let's dissect this. What's the worst thing that can happen? And she's like, oh, my life is just the worst right now. And I was like, no, let's break this down. What's the worst that can happen to you right now? And she's like, I could die. I was like, okay. But you're not dead, so clearly the worst hasn't happened yet. What's the next worst thing that can happen? She's like, well, something would happen to my family. It's like, okay, how are they doing? And she's like, well, they're good. I talked to them last weekend. They're living life down in Nashville. And I was like, okay. So that worst case hasn't happened yet. Coming up in degrees, you got some work troubles, you've got an ex that's harassing you. I mean, it seems bad, but personally, if an ex is harassing me, I know a couple of people down at the Clarksville Police Department that would be happy to go ahead and advise you on how to deal with that. When it comes to work, maybe there's an opportunity that you could go ahead and turn some stress into a victory at work. Maybe talk to your boss about snagging some extra hours for extra pay. Or maybe switching shifts with somebody in order to get yourself some take care of you time. And she kind of paused and she's like, I never thought of it that way. Jeremy, Sierra, this one is for you and the rest of y'all that are crazy enough to listen into this one. We oftentimes get so fixated with the here and now and the immediacy of what is facing us down. We look at, oh my God, life is hitting me like a truck. I have no free time, or, the worst is going to happen. But if you really break it down, is it the worst? Or are we just thinking it's the worst because our view has become so focused on what we absolutely think we need that we tend to forget about the other good things that are happening in our lives? So I want you to do me a favor. Next time you get that feeling in that pit in your stomach, and it's like, oh, things are getting bad, I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to really, really think about, is this as bad as you think it is? Is this salvageable? Can you move forward from this? How can you turn this to your advantage? Maybe it's bad. Maybe it's bad. Maybe you could use that badness to put other good things into perspective. I'm a believer. For me, at the end of my mortal life, I am looking forward to an eternity up in heaven with my God. It's going to be glorious. So is even death the worst that could happen? Again, it's hit me 3 different times with 3 different conversations over the last couple of days, and I needed to go ahead and share this because this has completely changed how I am looking at the world and really pulled a lot of stress off my shoulders. So I'm hoping the same thing happens to y'all. So at that, I wanted to thank you guys for taking 10 minutes of your day to share this with me, and I genuinely hope that I managed to brighten your day in one way, shape, or form.